Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for Quest Forum Digital Event Innovation Week. You've joined us for Constructing a Cloud Strategy Fit for 2020, presented by Terillium. Before we get started, to let you guys know, a couple of housekeeping notes to let you guys know, all phone lines are muted, but if you have any questions, feel free to drop them through the question module. We'll spend some time at the end answering any of those questions that have come through. We are recording this session and we'll be posting it on the Quest website. We'll make sure you guys get a follow-up email later this evening of how to access that information. Saw a few more folks join, so I want to let everybody know all phone lines are muted. But if you have questions, feel free to jump through the question module, and the Terillium team will spend a little bit of time at the end answering any of those questions that have come through. At this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Matt to get us kicked off for Constructing a Cloud Strategy Fit for 2020.
Great, thanks, Christina. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Matt Lesueur, Vice President of Sales at Terillium here in Cincinnati, Ohio. So appreciate you guys jumping on, spending an hour with us this afternoon. Shane, if you want to take us, and I'll do a quick backdrop on who Terillium is, and then we'll jump in and introduce our speakers for this afternoon. So Terillium has been around for over 26 years, and we have been, really supporting the Oracle JD Edwards customer base across the U.S. and globally. And in those 26 years, we've supported well over 700 clients, and that's in many different capacities, from full ERP deployments to supporting customers in a managed services capacity, continuous adoption services. So whether that's in an on-prem environment, taking improvements, or in a cloud environment to keep up with the quarterly updates. Lots of merger acquisition support as customers are bought and sold over the years. And then, of course, the topic for today to talk about helping to lay out that cloud journey, that cloud roadmap, helping customers move from an on-premise to a cloud environment. So I'll do a quick slide on kind of what we think makes us different in the consulting world, specifically in the Oracle space. So the first thing really is it's all about customer success. It's all about the reference, right? Without the reference, nothing else really matters. And our owner, Warren Bach, has said that from day one. And I think that's how we've grown over the years, is we make the customer the priority in all of our projects. The other thing is we're not all things to all people. All we do is Oracle, and that's all we've done since the beginning of the company. So we're very focused in Oracle ERP applications is where we spend all of our time. A thing that I think is important specifically for today's topic is really our cloud practice grew up from our JD Edwards and our EBS practice. So we have a heritage across those products, and we can speak both languages. That helps in the translation for customers as they consider moving from an on-prem to a cloud environment. The other thing that's definitely unique in today's world is really our W-2 model. So we don't use subcontractors. We have a W-2 model. We've been that way again since the beginning. Our owner is very adamant that we all follow one methodology. And again, it goes back to the success, right? It's all about the customer success. So we want everybody in the boat rowing in the same direction for the customer. The other thing I think is a little different than some of the other firms. So we carry no debt. We have no shareholders. We have one owner. So it makes us able to make the right decisions for the customer and not worry about hitting a quarterly revenue mark or something like that, or to pay down debt. Again, we can make the right long-term decisions for the customer. The other thing is we don't bait and switch. So the team we show up with on day one is the team that's going to support you through the life of that project before we hand you off to our dedicated managed services operation. And the last thing is, as I talked about managed services, we've had a 100% retention rate for our customers after they go live or go live with a project. They stick with us after that, and we've done a fantastic job over the years ensuring that our customers are getting the support they need and expect, and we've been able to retain 100% of those. So real quick, I'll do a quick intro, and these guys will introduce themselves as well. But Shane Eisenhauer, Shane has been with Terillium for 16 years. He led our J.D. Edwards practice for many, many years. And over the last several years, he is now leading our cloud practice and helping customers with their journey to the cloud. Shane's based out of Nashville, Tennessee. We do have a customer speaking from Monrovia Plants, Kevin Jensen. He's been in the space for 30 years. Kevin will be on a little later in the presentation to talk about his journey to the cloud and his roadmap that he's worked hand in hand with our next speaker, Lorin Cook. Lorin works for Oracle, but prior to Oracle, he spent years as a CIO and actually took his own organization to the cloud from a J.D. Edwards platform. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Lorin. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Welcome, everybody, and hope everyone's staying safe and healthy in these indifferent times. So I'm excited to be here and to be able to present, share a few thoughts. Thank you for Terillium for giving me this opportunity to, like I said, share a few things with you guys based off my experience and what I've seen previously and what I'm seeing today. Let's go ahead and get the safe harbor statement out of the way here, and then let's go to the next one. So a little bit more about me. As Matt mentioned, I was in the customer space for a very long period of time. I actually worked for J.D. Edwards coming out of college, and then right about when the PeopleSoft and the Oracle acquisitions occurred, I decided to move into the customer space in the role of a IT director, and then after that into the role of the CIO. All that time of which was running J.D. Edwards shops. So that was my forte. I'm very passionate and have a strong affection for J.D. Edwards, and especially for this user conference, having been attending these for years. I always have a very soft place in my heart for the J.D. Edwards product itself and for the J.D. Edwards customers. As Matt mentioned, I was one of the first J.D. customers to move into the cloud space about 8 years ago. So definitely was one of the first ones in, and for all right and indifferent, bumps and bruises and some successes. It was a very educational opportunity for me as a customer to really kind of see and catch the vision of what the cloud could become. And to that point, Oracle approached me and said, "Hey, we need to have better strategic alignment with our customers as we foresee all of our customer base moving to the cloud at some point in time." And so my role today with Oracle is to strategically align with on-premise customers, more often than not it's J.D. Edwards customers, and really help them understand what the cloud is and how best to get there and what's the correct pace for that individual business. And so I've been doing that for the past 5 years, and I do that across the country. I typically align to around 50 to 100 accounts at one time. So, and I'm based out of Tucson, Arizona, and my email address is on here. And please note my LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. In this new normal era that we're in, there'll be quite a few more webinars, I think, coming down the pipe. So, and I plan on doing a couple more here when we get into specific topics per se within the cloud over the next couple of months. So please reach out to me so you can look for that information coming. And right now, from an agenda standpoint, we're going to take a little bit of time to talk about the new normal. I think, again, a lot of what I'm going to share today is really from my perspective as having been a longtime customer and now being on the front lines and engaging with businesses across the country. So I'm going to share my thoughts on what I think the new normal could possibly entail. We'll spend a little bit of time on why, when, and how cloud is right for me. A lot of what we do strategically is to identify what is the right pace for each individual customer. And so it's good to understand the why, the when, and how do you go execute a transformational project. Third thing is to transform into the cloud, and we'll actually hear from Kevin Jensen, the CIO at Monrovia Growers, as Matt mentioned earlier, and hear his experience on how he is in the middle right now of that transformation to the cloud. And then last but not least, I'll have some next steps on how to engage. So when I meet with customers and with businesses, I always focus on the why cloud's important, when do you move to the cloud, and how do you do it. But I think in today's landscape, we now have a new bubble, and that is the what is the new normal. And like I said earlier, everyone kind of has their own opinion. Quite frankly, I went through the 2008 financial crisis and was really hoping never to have to go through something of that nature again. But lo and behold, here we are. And so I put down some thoughts on what I think are going to be some of the things that are going to be unique to this particular situation versus what we went through back then. Next slide. So I was in the CIO chair when the 2008 financial crisis hit, and I'll tell you that the retail company that I was at was several $100 million company that was brought down to its knees within 18 months, like a lot of companies, to the point where we were under $100 million in revenue, and it was a scary time. At the same time, there were some things that came out of that I thought were good from a technology standpoint. Technology all of a sudden then I think was much more relevant. I used to sit in the executive team meetings, and I think the perception was always, oh, he's the IT guy. But as we came out of the 2008 financial crisis, the IT guy was actually asked to share more strategic visions as to how we could leverage the technology that we'd invested in as a company. I think there were some things that came out of that. I think there was definitely an urgency for more with less, and to me, that's really where business intelligence really kind of took off, at least in my organization. The virtual servers versus physical servers definitely, I think, really took foot, and we'd actually been one of the first customers to get into the virtual server space, which was exciting at the time. And then the on-premise DC transitions, I think, was very much part of that, that came out of that. And I know for me personally, I introduced teleworking at the time. I think that was something that we actually used as a bit of a retainment, and I think that's going to be important, obviously, as we move forward into 2020 and going beyond. And I also thought that the buyer shifting really kind of transitioned at that point in time from on-site to online. I know for us personally, we went from thousands of people going into our locations to thousands of hits on the commerce side, and so there was a pretty big shift, I think, in how our consumer buying patterns had changed. So now moving forward, 2020, I think it's going to be, again, this is my perspective, it's going to be very interesting to see, especially how from a global supply chain strategy, how does some of the uncertainty overseas affect us as a business? How does it affect you as a technology team? Several of the engagements that I've been working on with customers right now, they have overseas supply chain models. Are those going to change? I think it's something that we as technology leaders need to anticipate and start looking for ways to understand what our business is going to need from a technology standpoint across the globe. As I think we all are aware of this, the teleworking is definitely going to increase. I think I know personally I've been on more Zoom training meetings over the last week than I can count, and I think that's going to be part of our new normal. I think on the technology side, what's going to be super exciting is that there's going to be an elimination of the manual processes. I think I was actually thinking about this yesterday, that there's going to be a renewed sense of urgency, in my opinion, to leverage the technology that not only that you have today, but to give you that urgency as a technology team to really push for what that next level of platform should be for you. So for all the customers that have been thinking about upgrades, have been contemplating upgrades, have been trying to get internal buy-in on doing something different, I think that's what's going to come out of this, is there's going to be urgency to do something different, especially for those that are on legacy data platforms. And I think what will be really interesting here too is that from a big data standpoint, and I put in here pervasive, because that's kind of the way that I look at all the new emerging technologies as it relates to data. I think it's going to be very specific. It's going to be very intelligent. It's going to be very focused on what it needs to be for the business. And to me, that's super exciting to see. But part of this too, though, is as you consume where you're at today and where you're going to go moving forward, the reality is right now we have a little bit of time. And so I think part of my message today is to really communicate that this is an opportunity, I think, for you as business and technology leaders to really craft out what your long-term vision is going to be. And I'll say that in what that cloud vision is going to be, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And to that point, let's go next slide here. So if you're like me, you've been reading lots of different articles and seeing lots of news. And one of the websites that I come across was actually listening to Governor Cuomo. He referenced the McKinsey website, and he actually relies on quite a bit of their analytics in his presentations. So that got me digging into their website a little bit and found some really good articles and some really good content from their perspective on what the new normal is going to look like. Like everybody has their own opinions, and I think the underlying thing is that none of us truly know. But one thing in here in this particular article, it talked about how the result will be an environment that, while different from the past, is no less rich in possibility for those who are prepared. And I think that's the point today that we want to get across, is that you have an opportunity right now to really start preparing for what that new normal will look like for your business and for your organization. And so I put a link in here too. I would strongly encourage you to check out their site and look at some of their insights there. So next slide. So as we go through this, a lot of it is, so why is cloud more important now than before? I think it's been important for quite a while now, but I think it really takes on a whole different level of urgency at this point in time. And these are things that I'd already talked about before. From a long-term TCO value standpoint, it really, and then also it's going to give IT a chance to be proactive versus reactive, which was always something that I know we struggled with in my organizations. And then the consistent innovation, I think, is going to be so clear. So from here, I want to show a little video here for a healthcare customer who is obviously the healthcare industry is very much near and dear to us right now as we watch these folks fight this epidemic. But I want to show a video on St. Joseph's.
Providence St. Joseph Health is one of the largest health systems in the United States. We have 125,000 caregivers, 51 ministries and hospitals in our hospital system, and nearly 1,000 clinics.
Providence's mission is to serve the poor and the vulnerable. But what I think is amazing is that mission, it's ingrained in us. It actually influences every decision that we make at the organization.
One of the big challenges we have at Providence St. Joseph Health is we've grown through acquisitions. So right now we have 14 ERP systems and fragmented processes.
When I joined Providence, it was surprising to see basic stuff like submitting an expense report, purchasing a computer, onboarding a new employee took days and sometimes weeks to do.
Getting my pay stub the first time, it took exploring 6 different websites, probably 10 or 15 clicks for something as basic as my pay stub.
I see folks spending days just to pull data together so they can look at HR data with financial data. It shouldn't be that difficult. We live in a world where things should be very accessible.
And so our opportunity as we move to Oracle Cloud is not only to retire those 14 ERP systems, but more importantly is to really simplify the business process. The software as a service, every quarter, those new features are going to come.
It's not simply our finance function, our supply chain function. The HR cloud product touches every one of our caregivers across multiple regions. Oracle was the right partner for us. They showed us what it could look like with AI, machine learning, automation, robotics, and that was an exciting future for us.
We can then apply those to healthcare. And that may be to improve the caregiver productivity or experience. More importantly, it simplifies our patient experience, improves those healthcare outcomes, lowers the cost of health.
We must design for our future. We cannot settle for the status quo of how we do things today.
So going back to why cloud's important, you heard several things in that video there that I think will resonate with a lot of you out there. There's a lot of consolidation that needs to be done and some blocking and tackling. Cloud gives you that opportunity, I think. But the even bigger than that is this is important because when you're able to get on a consistent platform, then you have the ability to innovate. So if we go to the next slide. So I get asked on a regular basis why I'm not in the CIO space anymore, and I'll quite frank here, that the brain damage having to update and upgrade all the time really wore me out. And one of the beauties of the cloud, with the big attractors for me, was the opportunity to upgrade one time and to never have to go through that process again, except on a quarterly basis. And that's important from the IT being proactive versus reactive, but it's also important now as we move into these new normals that you have the ability to innovate because you're getting technology at such a fast pace on the quarterly basis. The cloud averages 2,000 to 3,000 quarterly updates for your applications. That's real-time innovation that you are going to have the opportunity to take advantage of as a cloud customer. And I think it's been very interesting to also listen and watch these the different newscasts. There have been several people talked about the US's ability to innovate at such a quick pace. Mr. Navarro was talking about that last week. Mark Cuban talked about this, that we as a society and as a business, we are so good at innovating new ideas and new technology, but it's essential that you're on a platform that's going to allow you to do that. And I think that's where the urgency to get to the cloud is going to be much stronger than the past. So next one. The other thing too, so kind of piggybacking on that, is that one of the biggest differences that when I was looking at the legacy versus the cloud per se, is that from a core standpoint, I've always felt that legacy ERPs, JDOers, SAPs, and Microsoft always very, very good about capturing the data, but not very good about exporting the data. I think one of the biggest functional advantages within the core is that you have layered in there emerging technologies that are part of that core foundation. As an example, if we go to the next one. So layered into the cloud platform, you have the artificial intelligence, you have chatbots, you have blockchain, you have Internet of Things, you have virtual reality. Machine learning is right around the corner, and before all the COVID stuff hit, that was something that was really starting to ramp up and have a lot of momentum behind it. I think there's still going to be, we're going to be pumping the brakes a little bit, but it's still important to understand though that these things are built into that core cloud platform. So as you do migrate to the cloud, you're going to be able to take advantage of these emerging technologies in your day-to-day applications. I think that's so key for having that innovative platform like this. And here's another example too. Go to the next one here. So this is a busy slide, but it's something that it's intentionally busy because I want to show you that, from an emerging technology standpoint, those advanced technologies that are built into the platform, there's a lot going on. This was actually something I built for another customer that has been a long time on JDOers. And so we wanted to show that financials is not just financials anymore. There's a lot of built-in advanced technologies in the financial modules within the cloud. Supply chain, I could talk about supply chain all day long. There's so much excitement built into the cloud platform on the supply chain side. You'll hear a little bit more about that from Kevin directly from Monrovia, because that was a big driver for them when they were looking at the cloud. Next slide. So I talk about this a lot, and it's when does it make sense to you? I think that's one of the beauties and one of the strengths of the cloud is that everyone moves at their pace. I think that you have the opportunity to do that from a phased approach. The days of the Big Bang approaches to me are no longer there. It's the opportunity to understand when do you move to the cloud, and typically that's going to be around legacy system upgrades. You heard from St. Joseph's about business acquisitions. I'll give you guys a couple more examples here in a minute of other companies that were moving to the cloud because of the acquisitions, which before, again, all this epidemic hit, that was a big driver. Improved business functions. And then now you got to put in there economic disruptions, new normals. Those are going to be drivers for when you move to the cloud. Now I want to show one more video here if we can on a PeopleSoft customer. This is actually Kohl's. Obviously, they're being very hard hit from what's going on right now, but I think their insight as to why they moved to the cloud is very relevant.
Over 15 million people who shop us. So we have a lot of data. The best thing to unlock is knowledge from that data, and that's what we're working towards every day. So I don't think anyone wakes up and says, hey, I want to replace the financial system today. It's a huge amount of risk and it's a big cost. We had to. We have been using a PeopleSoft legacy system for 20 years. You can only imagine the amount of build-ons that we've had to the system. We are never on the most recent version because we didn't want to take the time to upgrade. We actually just implemented ERP and EPM, and we implemented them over the last 11 months. When we moved to the cloud, it obviously gave us a lot more flexibility. It heightened our control environment. It gave us new reporting and elevated our analytics. The true value that we can be as finance leaders in organizations help drive strategy, really figuring out how to unlock that value for our business partners so they can make the right decisions.
Now, this is something where if I was in the room presenting to all of you, I would actually ask everybody to raise their hands on who feels the same way that she does when they're running their business right now. I suspect that 99% of us have felt that way or feel that way today. So good example of when it made sense for them as a PeopleSoft customer to move to the cloud. So that brings us to our last one, which is how do we get you there? This is where when I discuss with customers where we spend a lot of time, and I think it's important here to understand that there's a lot of momentum that's going on right now, and this was pre-COVID, but even now that things haven't completely stopped yet. A lot of momentum, and what's great about these particular customers here is that there's a variety. Houlihan Lokey was a longtime JD Edwards customer. Wonderful company, had EBS and JD Edwards. Station Casinos, fascinating. Got to know them very, very well. They longtime World customer, had just grown through acquisitions. They were concerned that with the Raiders coming to town, that they weren't going to have the capacity to be able to keep up. So their journey to the cloud really was around talent and how do we maximize our talent within the Station Casinos frame, as well as be able to manage all the different varieties of business that they have. CoolSys, one of the leading refrigeration companies in the country. Their business is really starting to take off now as well. Monrovia, who you guys are going to hear from here soon, but and then Oriental Trading is a recent one that we just committed to going to the cloud here back in February. But the interesting thing here, and the point I wanted you to make, is that each one of these companies, their transition to the cloud is different. It's a different pace. It's what makes sense to them, and that's where very specific phasing comes into place. That's where the ability to roadmap is so key to your transition to the cloud. Because I'll tell you, even Monrovia, you'll hear from Kevin, we're talking, this took us several months to really identify how that transition should work. And so that's why it's so important, I think, now to really take the time and start building out that cloud strategy. So let's go to the next one here. So I'm very much a glasses half full kind of person. The current environment that we're in, yes, it's brutal. It's so unsettling. There's so many things we don't know what's going to happen. But at the same time, there's going to be opportunities. And as business leaders, as technology leaders, I encourage you to seek out change. Look for what those opportunities are going to be. Leverage your technology vendors strategically versus tactically. I talk about that a lot. It's so important to leverage those relationships with your vendors strategically. Too often we get caught up in just being tactical, and it's understandable. But at the same time, though, this is where you can really lean on those vendors to help you strategically align with what your business is going to need tomorrow and a year from now. And to that end specifically, Oracle and Terillium and partners like Terillium provide a roadmap opportunity for you to understand from a workshop standpoint where you're at today and where you're going to tomorrow. And that's the role that I play now with Oracle. And to that end, I want to share a quick video on Monrovia. This is Kevin Jensen, the CIO, who's become a good friend of mine as he's been transitioning to the cloud. This will give you a chance to hear straight from Kevin a little bit about his business. And then once we finish up, I'll turn some time over to Kevin to actually share what his journey is.
Monrovia Plants is a company that was founded in 1926. We grow plants, shrubs, and trees and provide them across the lower 48 states. Currently at Monrovia, we spend an inordinate amount of effort and time trying to coordinate and report on the information that's stored in many different systems, trying to have a holistic view of what we're doing and being able to make data-driven decisions is very difficult with what we have with our migration to Oracle Cloud. One of the benefits is using the Oracle Modern Best Practices, a set of standardization that has been built into each one of the modules in the product. We expect that the full connected set of applications will enable us to eliminate and reduce many disparate systems, bringing our data together into one cohesive location. We've purchased financials, sales, marketing, demand planning, forecasting, planning central, Internet of Things, CRM, expense reporting, and the entire HR suite. We selected DAS as our system implementer. As we've started implementing the different modules, Oracle's Modern Best Practices allows us to evaluate every business process that we have and be able to identify what's the best way for us to do that, to lay the foundation to be able to implement new and exciting technologies and make more informed and data-driven decisions. I'm actually looking forward to getting my data and my processes into Oracle Cloud, where there is more people, talent, and time spent protecting it with security. Using the Oracle Modern Best Practices, we end up with the most efficient and effective methods in each one of our business areas to help drive improvements and standardization and profitability as we move forward as a company.
So before I turn this over to Kevin for a couple minutes here, just wanted to share a couple thoughts on Kevin. I think he's done a phenomenal job of going into his environment, understanding his end user, say customer base, and understanding what they need. And I guess my message is that he's been a tremendous change agent for Monrovia plants, and going into the environment that he's going into and the end users that he has there, and being able to put in such significant change to really position this company for going forward, it has been nothing short of phenomenal. So with that, I want to turn the time over to Kevin. How you doing there, my friend?
Hey, Lorin. It's good to see you. Good to talk to everybody. You didn't tell me you were going to show that dumb video, but anyway.
You got a haircut since then.
Yeah. Well, so just wanted to give you a little bit of a background. So before I joined Monrovia, I was involved in a extensive JD Edwards 9.2 upgrade. Basically, it was rolling about 13 ERP systems into a single instance of JD Edwards 9.2. And when I came to Monrovia, I inherited a JD Edwards 8.12 implementation that was put in 2009. And it was, if I had to guess, I'd say about 90% customized. We had so many things that we had tried to customize and then customize again that we broke major components of functionality within JD Edwards. So we had a system that allowed us to kind of sort of sell our plants, but it didn't meet any of the business needs. And as I started looking at it, I realized that the only things we liked about the system were the ancillary products that we had connected to it, the reporting products, the expense products, or all of these other things. But the core components of JD Edwards itself were so old and so archaic and so broken with our customizations that we needed to do something different. So as we looked at what our options were, one of our options was upgrading JD Edwards. But we looked at all of our options, including non-Oracle products, and begrudgingly, I actually looked at Oracle Cloud. Lorin was instrumental in getting me to really look at it. And as we did so, we realized that all of the ancillary products that we had would be eliminated with going into Oracle Cloud, except for mobility and possibly taxation, unless we wanted to stay with Vertex inside of Oracle Cloud. And so as we looked at that and said, okay, Oracle Cloud is an option for us. And so then we looked at some of the big needs that we had. Our company was very afraid to do a conversion, a big bang conversion. Back in 2009, when JD Edwards went in with the financial upheaval, everything else that was going on, the company came very close to going out of business with everything that was going on. So it was remembered as a very painful time. The company was very afraid of doing that again. So when we explored the options with Oracle Cloud of actually phasing our implementation in, it provided a few benefits for us. One is that we could spread out the implementation over several years and not have to do a big bang with the whole company and affecting every employee and every department all at once. Also, it allowed us to spread the costs of the project over several years and not have to pay for it all in one. So we ended up with basically a three-phased approach. The first phase, we rolled out finance. We set up integration using Oracle Integration Cloud, set up the integration between the Oracle Cloud and JD Edwards, and that actually works extremely well. And so all of our finance, except for AP, is currently in Oracle Cloud. All of our order management, purchase orders, sales orders, work orders is all still in JD Edwards. Then our second phase, after we went live in February of last year with finance. Then we brought in Oracle Transportation Management and Human Capital Management. And we went live with Oracle Transportation Management last fall, went live with Human Capital Management January. And so we brought those into the fold, if you will. And then we're currently working on the remainder of supply chain. So order management, manufacturing, maintenance, quality, procurement, product data hub, and CRM that we are currently working on. We are currently driving for a November go live date of this year. Some of the things that it's done for us, our board of directors was very open to the project, where we were able to see the costs and the pain of the implementation be spread out over those multiple phases, multiple years, so that it doesn't all hit our books and hit our challenges all at once. Looking at it from a perspective right now of COVID, that if we were trying to do a big bang for this fall, there's absolutely no way it would happen, just because of what's going on with the company and how this virus has affected us as we've gone into this. However, it's still a possibility. It's still something we're driving towards, because our finance, our HR, our transportation teams are already on the new product. And when the work from home mandate came out within our company, it actually was a really simple process. We took a couple of days before that came out, put together instructions that included URLs, and said, here you go, finance team, this is what you got to do. Go home, go to this URL, do your job. We actually were already using video conferencing, so there wasn't anything we had to do in order to support the teleworkers as we went forward with it. There are a lot of things that I could list 1,000,001 options that we're looking to improve upon. But anybody who's familiar with JD Edwards 812, comparing that to anything that's on the market today, especially Oracle Cloud, there's just not a lot of comparison. In JD Edwards, we run work orders and sales orders, and that's basically about the extent of it. Turning it around and having analytics in the product itself, doing things that, for example, if you're on a later version of JD Edwards with your saved queries, that you can actually have a screen pre-populated with data when you go to it. That doesn't exist in 8.12. It's just an empty spreadsheet that we have on that. So there are all of the best things that I liked about JD Edwards 9.2. We have all of those in Oracle Cloud, and the conversion, the training, the transfer of I'll just start with my finance team, was extremely simple. The easiest go live, so I've had two of the easiest go lives I've ever had with this. Our finance go live, we finished at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning of go live weekend, and everybody went home. We came back on Monday because we didn't have anything to do. The transportation management go live, we actually finished at 5 o'clock on Friday night. And the go live was on both of those modules was very simple, very straightforward, and we had a good team that worked with us on doing it, and a great product for us to go forward with. We're very excited and looking forward to continuing to move forward and get into the new products and the new modules as we go live later this fall. Lorin, I'll turn it back to you, unless you've got any questions.
Thank you very much, Kevin, and thank you very much, Lorin, as well. This is Shane Eisenhauer, so I'm going to pick up and really begin to focus a little bit more on, now that we've talked about setting a strategy, what's the next step? How can Terillium help? How can Oracle help in everybody's journey? And as Lorin said, everyone's journey is different. So the key thing here is, we really feel strongly that a personalized roadmap put together by Terillium and Oracle is the right first step. And in doing so, the first thing we really try to do is, in a 30-minute, 60-minute conversation, get our arms around, where are you? What do you have? What are the things you most want to get out of the roadmap? And that allows us to turn around and then focus on setting up a 1 or 2 day workshop that hits on the things that matter most for your organization. There's an educational component here, because a lot of times you don't know what you don't know. So it's our job to help you know what's possible. We need to gather metrics to understand where the value is. We also try to align with your team. Where do they see the business going? Where are your pain points? And really, ultimately, the goal here is to build a roadmap for you and your organization. Lorin, is there anything else you want to chime in here?
Yeah, this goes back to what we talked about a little bit before, that since you have some time, I don't want to say time right now, this is a golden opportunity for your organization to really build out this roadmap. Take this opportunity to strategically align with Terillium, with Oracle, to understand what you have today and how do you transition tomorrow. Kevin talked about his phasing and his transition plan. We really were able to build out a couple of different options and different approaches that he and the Monrovia executive team was able to then hone in on and make a decision on how they want to move forward. That could not have happened if we had not done this roadmap workshop. So I would strongly encourage you as a customer to engage in this as soon as possible.
Thank you, Lorin. So, to give people a little bit of specifics and shape about, what does this step 2, 1 or 2 day workshop really look like, and what does it really get out of the investment of time? So the first thing is, we spend a lot of time sitting with the executives and the line of business interviews. And really what we're trying to get our arms around there is, where is the business? Where is it going? What, from a business process perspective, there are things that are working. We want to keep those and improve upon those, but what's not working? What are those pain points? Where are those future needs? As I mentioned before, some of this is educational of what we've seen other customers coming off of on-prem systems that Oracle owns, moving to the cloud, and where are they seeing value, and seeing if those things are relevant for your organization. We also get into understanding where your organizational readiness is. That feeds into an implementation planning workshop where we're dissecting the components of what are the projects, what are the options, what does data look like, what do reports look like, what is our strategy around all of these things, how do we want to use the modern interface tools, and how does that evolve with how we choose to deploy. So those are the inputs. That's what we ask from you and your organization. What you get out of this in a tangible fashion is we'll zone in on some areas where a product overview makes sense, and Oracle can assist with those things. We like to do an applied technology workshop that helps you understand, especially if you're moving from an on-prem system, what is it like being in a cloud world from a technology perspective? What are the tools? How does it work? The next thing we really spend a good deal of time on is a functionality capability assessment, and to give you a little bit more of a flavor of what that looks like. The first thing we really do, and this is in step one, is we really try to understand the major business processes in your organization, the sub-processes, the systems that you're using. What do you need from a reporting and analytic perspective? What does your data look like? How many mods have you done? And how far off is that from a leading practice? And all of those things are great, but we also look at them in 3 different lenses. Those are the areas we assess. But first is fit. Now in the future, what does the cloud offer, and how does that line up to your needs? Number 2, value. Not all business problems are meant to be solved by software, but we're going to look at where is there value to solve a current business problem with ERP Cloud. And then what's most important? And this gives us kind of the beginning of how are these pieces? What do I get out of that? And that really feeds into the next piece of this, which is roadmap phase deployment options, right? This backs into time and cost and resources. Almost every one of these we've done, there's generally 2 to 4 main paths and then a lot of little deviations. So what we try to do here is working with your organization, Oracle and my team, is first, what is it I'm going to do? What functions am I going to attack? Where? Am I going site-based? What does that look like? How am I going to attack those? So what is my basic approach? Am I going to leverage all the leading practices out of the box? Am I going to do as-is to-be mapping? Different organizations look at it differently. I certainly have an opinion of the best way on how, and we'll recommend that. Who's involved? How involved are they to make that option work? And then most importantly, why? Why would I take this phase option versus this phase option? And to underscore some of the points that Lorin gave earlier, I want to talk about a couple of our customers. Henkel & McCoy is a construction organization that was implementing JD Edwards. However, they had very advanced needs around HR and in procurement. They needed to do things that JD just flat out doesn't do. JD does not do sourcing well. It does not do contracts. There's no real available portal. The approval rules in JD are relatively basic, and supplier quality. So this is a company that said, you know what, as I'm implementing my new ERP, replacing a legacy system, I'm implementing JD Edwards ERP Cloud at the same time against that same schedule to bring up all the value to the organization at once. Now, another very different organization is LSI. If you've ever been to a gas station, all of the branding around the pumps, all the lighting, the poles, that's their primary line of business. Their situation's really different. They have 2 JD instances from acquisition. One is plain straight vanilla, and the other one is super highly modified. And in the modified instance, they really have 2 or 3 very distinct businesses living in there. And on top of that, they actually have a Microsoft and a NetSuite piece and part laying out there. Their strategy was very different. They looked at how do I get some really quick win and value, and replacing an SAP product, Ariba, with Procurement Cloud was a great first step. And then they're looking at going with a business process around finance, which is a very typical way of looking at things. So especially if you have multiple ERPs scattered, finance generally is a good way to get consolidated financials up and moving quickly. And then they're going to move into a line of business and looking at the lines of business that most need to evolve and improve their processes and attack the businesses that are most ready to make that journey. So those are 2 very different roadmaps and options. And these we put together for our customers based upon their unique needs. And the last part we always include in this is a value analysis TCO. The dollars need to add up to make sense. We keep these numbers real, as well they should be. And this is another example when a customer begins to look at TCO, something pops in their mind. Eco Energy is a Nashville, Tennessee-based company. They're one of the top 10 largest privately held companies in the state of Tennessee. They are in the energy business. They deal with ethanol production and transportation. They deal with trade. They deal with marketing agreements. They're also big in the natural gas industry. Long-term JDE customer, long-term Terillium customer. And they began looking at the maintenance dollars that they were spending at JDE, and they were looking at an upgrade. And then they decided to take a pause, do a thorough evaluation of many different products for financials. And ERP Cloud came out leaps and bounds as number one. The TCO was fantastic compared to JD Edwards. The features and functionality solved a host of business issues that they were facing. So this is, once again, this one was a big bang deployment. So everybody's journey is different. And these are the things that, as part of our call to action, and our road mapping sessions that we would want to deliver to your organizations. So I'm going to pause there and open up things for questions and feedback. And instead of the chat feature, there is a question feature that you could utilize.
Great, thank you, Shane. So we do have a few questions here, so I'll read those off. And if anybody has any additional questions, please send those in now and we'll make sure to answer those here. So first question, and this might be maybe a good question for you, Shane and Lorin, does Oracle have guidelines and a methodology for migrating JDE to Oracle Cloud?
Yeah, so I'll start with that. There are guidelines and processes that we use for all of our migrations to Oracle Cloud, regardless of the legacy system we're coming off of. In terms of JD Edwards, Terillium has a long history in the JD Edwards space. So we've developed some of our own IP to assist our JD Edwards customers in specific to get to the cloud and really try to tackle some of the data conversion problems that generally plague all projects.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback that too. I think this is one of the inherent advantages to being a current Oracle customer. Right? You have an entire slew of developers and product development that focuses on these conversions specifically. I think that's the biggest movement within the ecosystem right now is current customers. So the short answer is yes. Partners will have specific different methodologies on how they do it, but from an Oracle standpoint, yes, there's processes and methodologies that can be leveraged to transition you to the cloud in a much easier format.
Okay, great, thank you. And here's a question for Kevin.
I type on that as well.
Go ahead.
Just where we did the interface between the two, it actually greatly facilitated our data conversion. That the interface was really simple to set up, given everything else that we do, and to have the data that just it's in both systems and it stays synchronized as it runs. Every time an order goes, everything goes back and forth, and it has really made our data conversion process so much simpler, because having it in both systems at the same time, you don't have that whole data conversion, data load, everything else. We test the interface, we tested it, and we've been running on it for a couple of years now with doing this phase migration. So for me, data conversion is less of a concern than it normally is because of the integration capabilities that we have.
It's a very good point, Kevin. The other thing, I'm spending a lot of time in the JDE space. Interfaces within ERP Cloud are far easier animal to tackle than they ever were in JD Edwards. Anyone that tried to do a web service in JD Edwards from a development perspective probably ended up regretting it. The tools are better, the data and a lot of the mapping, and at least from a Terillium perspective, as a partner that understands both products, we can facilitate those things greatly. And when it gets to JD versions and processing options, you probably don't want to move those things over exactly, Cloud is much more business rule driven. So if you're a JDE person, it feels more like setting up advanced pricing rules, which gives you much better logic and much better business processes. So that's some of the ways my organization addresses a JD Edwards to cloud move.
Yeah, one final thought on that too, that, Kevin mentioned the whole best practices. I think that when you go back to the innovation conversation, because there are such consistent levels of innovation coming into your product, the conversation of when you transition to the cloud is much more around why won't the cloud work for me versus making the cloud work for you, right? I think that's, and Kevin alluded to that, with the modern best practices that are there really help you drive the conversation from that conversion standpoint of just taking what you have today per se and then throwing it up into the cloud. And that's where that roadmap kind of comes into play for sure, to identify what that is. Great question, by the way.
Okay, this is a question for Kevin, and I think you touched on this already a little bit, but let's see if you have anything else to add here. So question for you, Kevin, why did they choose to leave AP and JDE when moving rest of finance to Oracle ERP Cloud?
We chose to leave AP in JD Edwards because all of our purchase orders existed in JD Edwards, and it just made more sense to do the matching against the purchase orders in JD Edwards than to try to bring it all over at that point in time. There's as we looked at the interfaces and the people and the timing, it just made more sense to do that. So when we do procurement, that's when we'll bring the AP over. So it's kind of, I guess I might have stated it a little bit wrong. We match the purchase order in JD Edwards. We then create the voucher. The voucher is interfaced over to Oracle Cloud. The voucher is then paid out of Oracle Cloud, but the purchase order matching process is still in JD Edwards.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So let's see. This is a question for Terillium. Does Terillium host clients in their own cloud or provide guidance to bring customers to Oracle Cloud or other clouds provided by non-Oracle vendors like AWS?
So Terillium does not host for a JD Edwards customer. We do with nothing in the hosting business. We've helped several customers move from on-prem physical hardware in JD Edwards to either Oracle infrastructure or other third-party infrastructure.
Okay, great. So this might be a question for all three of you, really, whoever wants to chime in, Shane, Lorin, and Kevin. Are there still some cases where on-premise ERP might still be a better option?
Lorin, you want to start?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, that goes back to, we talked about with customers as far as having a different pace. You're absolutely right. I mean, there's parts within the supply chain that have come along from a maturity standpoint last. So when I showed a couple of different customer examples up there, Real Alloy is a good example. They do a lot of process manufacturing. So that product is definitely maturing right now. So that's something though that we wouldn't tackle in phase one. So there are different aspects that the on-premise is still relevant today, but again, going back to this isn't a big bang approach. This is a phased approach. And I will say that the build outs in the cloud now has come so fast. They're talking $6 to $8 billion a year that's going into this product build out, that there are very few areas now that aren't there in the cloud or won't be in the cloud over the next 12 months. So hopefully that answers your question. But that's again is why the phased approach is so key strategically in how you go into the cloud. And now, Kevin, I don't know if you want to add something on that, because I know we specifically put the manufacturer, some of the supply chain for later in the project because we knew that ahead of time.
And I would say it really all comes down to your business requirements, your business needs. What is your business need? And if you can define exactly what your business needs, you look at the products that are out there, and if you take a informed look at what the capabilities of those products are, then for me that would answer your question. There are some times that it might be you may be best staying on premise. I don't think that there's a straight answer for that. It depends on your type of business and what your business needs are. And if the Oracle Cloud has the right product and the right features for your business, then it's a good option.
Just lastly, at a bazillion foot level, the cloud footprint is far more comprehensive than JD Edwards. I mean, you just look at things. I mentioned a lot of things in procurement, global order promising, AP automation. So at that level, it's much more comprehensive, but it does depend on the customer, what industry you are, what products you're using today. And my last point is that list of reasons to stay on-prem because of feature functionality that doesn't exist in the cloud is getting smaller, and it gets small very quick.
Okay, another question for you here. So I believe this is regarding the roadmap workshop that you referenced, Shane. So what are your deliverables as part of step 2? How is it useful for an organization to make a decision on cloud transformation?
Sure. So the deliverables will tailor to some degree based upon our step 1 conversation and your unique goals. But the things that always get created out of this, number 1, what are your deployment options? Time, cost. You can go this way, you can go this way. A TCO. And then from a business capability mapping, because functional capability always matters, but functional capability isn't for everyone the main reason to make a decision, but it's always one of the parts that we provide our customers. So at times we've had customers that when we've engaged in kind of the 2-day workshop, training and change management is a big deal for them. So for those customers, we'll kind of take an assessment for how would we deal with the organizational change management and job role change. So the key here is really in phase 1, in step 1, let's talk about those things that are really critical to you, and we'll align the deliverables to that.
Well, I'll add on that too that this is something that's done in conjunction with Oracle. So there's a whole strategic group now, like myself, and I have several colleagues too, that we do that with the partner. And it's a matter of we want to give you options. I think that's part of it. It's one of those inherent values that you have as being a current Oracle customer paying support. And it's something that I did not take advantage of very well when I was a customer is the opportunity to have a couple of different routes of how you get there. And I think that's the main thing that comes out of that is plan forward, but then also have that plan and have a couple of different options that you can work through, especially as things are evolving and changing pretty quickly. That's what we did at Monrovia. Kevin mentioned an upgrade. We looked at an upgrade path. We looked at a cloud path. We looked at phase cloud path. We gave them 2 or 3 different options out of that roadmap deliverable that they could then consume internally and come back with direction for us on how they want to proceed.
Okay, great, thank you. So one last question here, and we're a little over on time, so if anybody has any final questions, please send those in now, but otherwise we'll wrap up with this one. So, and it's a specific question having to do with implementing overseas. So for the person who asked this, we can also follow up with you after if we need to have more specific follow-up. But the question is, Oracle Terillium team, have you faced any customer need with a need to implement Oracle Cloud overseas? How about localization? Is it supported from Oracle? ESUs or similar? How complex is it?
Yeah, I encourage whoever the individual is to absolutely reach out go to the Terillium website and simply search 2020 Cloud Strategy, and you'll get the link. You'll also get that as a follow-up email. But number 1, localizations, yes, Oracle takes care of those things. Depends on your country, but the list is very comprehensive. The patching is all Oracle from an ERP cloud perspective. They own the infrastructure and the software patching. So it's a very different thing. As far as my own organization's ability to implement overseas, we have several global customers. So we're certainly capable of doing that, but we are, predominantly a US W-2 base. So, it depends on your individual situation.
Okay, great. Well, that's all the questions we have for now. So Matt, if you're on, I'll hand back over to you to wrap us up.
Great. Thanks, everybody. So appreciate everybody's time this afternoon. Right, if you're ready to maybe do that initial step one, right, which is just that hour phone call to kind of dig in and kind of find out what's important to your organization, what's going on. Either go to our website. You can. We're going to email out a copy of the slides. It'll have a link to schedule that phone conversation with Terillium and Oracle to really start to talk about the why, when, and the how when it comes to cloud migrations and a road mapping session. So, the first phone call, right, that's easy to get scheduled, and we'd be more than happy to do that, around your schedule. So thank you. I'll hand this back over to Quest.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Terillium and Oracle and Kevin, for joining us today. For the folks that are on the phone, just to let you guys know, we did record the session. We'll be sending out information of how to access this. Also want to let everybody know that there are some other sessions the rest of this week, so we'll continue Quest Innovation Week, including a session later on this week on Friday from Terillium. And they will also be joining us for some of these other weeks. So please stay tuned to sign up for Quest Forum digital event continuing rest of this week and then kicking back off May 27th through June 18th. Again, I want to thank Terillium, Oracle for joining us and presenting this session. And we appreciate you guys taking the time to present with us. And we look forward to seeing you guys and the attendees on a future webinar. Have a great day.